morning. My name is Kevin Kelly. I'm the CEO of Emerald Packaging, based up in Union City. We're the primary flexible packaging provider to the produce industry. And I'm psyched today because I get to moderate a panel as opposed to be on it. And we have a great panel today to talk about what's going on in packaging and what experts are seeing and what they'd like to see. So why don't we begin with some introductions? We'll begin with Matt Banghart from LK Plastics.
Thanks, Kevin. Matt Banghart with LK Packaging. I lead our food and sustainability initiatives. LK is a 50-year-old privately held company based in Commerce, California, so a little down the road there from Kevin. Our focus is on perimeter packaging with a heavy emphasis on produce, so I'm excited to participate in this discussion today.
Great to have you. How about you, Will?
Hi, my name is Will Murray. I am Senior Director of Operations for Sinclair, based in Fresno, California. Sinclair is a provider of labels for fresh produce, as well as the labeling equipment to apply that.
You are the provider of labels to fresh produce. John Pandel probably needs no introduction, but give us one anyway.
John Pandel. I do business development work these days for Pandel Brothers, and we are growers of grapes in Central California and importers, exporters, and marketers of grapes and blueberries from a number of countries.
And Stephanie, you're the next generation, right?
Yes, I am. So I'm Stephanie Pandel. John did have the introduction for me. I'm also with Pandel Brothers, but I do marketing and sustainability. So I lead our sustainability initiatives for all of our packaging materials that we are doing for table grapes.
And how long you been there?
About 2.5 years.
Well, welcome to the panel. Is it your first one?
It is.
Ah, good. Well, I'm happy to be the host. You know, there's a lot going on obviously in packaging, but the big thing out there that folks may or may not know a heck of a lot who are watching is the SB 54, the recycling bill that's sort of lumbering down the tracks in the state of California. And we're so excited about it. But the first big hurdles come in 2028. And there's all sorts of things folks should be doing that they're not, or they're just starting. But Stephanie, you were the last, you'll be the first. What do you know, if anything, about SB 54? As I call it, there's really some other title for it. And how is it affecting your thinking now in 2025?
It's really forcing us to very much look into innovation quicker than I think a lot of people were expecting, looking at those recyclable, those compostable, and all those options that we need to start implementing for us. We're also trying to be aware of what facilities have what capabilities. Not all regions in California are made the same to be able to recycle the same materials. So it's mandating us to reduce our plastic use and figure out ways around reducing those plastics.
Do you see easy ways to do it?
Yes and no. I would say in certain commodities, it would be easier than others. Grapes in the berry category is a little bit harder due to the fact that we have a very moisture heavy item. We store in a humid climate. It's not the easiest to just put it into a corrugated container and call it a day. You could potentially grow mold in those conditions and cause other issues within that.
Will, we'll jump to you next. How is it affecting the R&D and the new product development and the thinking at Sinclair?
I'd say SB 54 is one of many regulations around the world that we're working to meet. There's been a host of changes requiring compostable labels, the most recent being the PPWR, the Packaging and Packaging Waste Reduction Act in Europe, which will require label or sticky labels on fruit to be compostable starting in 2028. We understand there's also regulation in Australia and New Zealand coming. So it's just one of many that we're working toward to deliver solutions.
How do they all compare, or how are what they demand similar but also different?
It's from an approach standpoint, the different regulators are citing different standards. The standards are really similar. There's some nuance in heavy metals and how the standard is administered, but they're all trying to get to the point where the labels are compostable. Some jurisdictions like Europe will require compostable. Others, the goal is if it's plastic, it has to be a compostable label. So we're working hard to understand each of those nuances and then help packers. And one of the challenges with this is that the fruit might be grown in, say, South America or North America and then shipped to another region. Typically or historically, we've worked with the regulations for the packer in that country. And now we need to understand where they're shipping to, and packers need to understand their business of where does it start and where does it end. And
That's
it gets
true.
complex.
That's not just grown in the United States, used in the United States, grown in the
Correct.
United States, sent to Europe or New Zealand or maybe Australia with different requirements across all of them.
Yeah.
Joy to the world. Well, Matt, you're in flexibles, I think, somewhat, including lidding, and I would guess you're also in trays. How's this landing on your shoulders?
Well, this just seems to be a continuing discussion of where we've been in our product development. We've been addressing sustainability in the various ways that that's measured for some time. The latest legislation is just another element in that. We have products, whether it's compostable, recyclable, that can meet a multiple of needs. The challenge has always been commercializing them due to the cost differential over traditional products. And then, as Stephanie has indicated, sometimes there's products that don't have the same performance characteristics for that. So, those things are driving additional research into how to take these sustainable substrates and then make them even more performance oriented, make them more machinable, which has been a barrier in the past, but with a lot of the advances in machinery, a lot of these products are easier to automate. So that's really where we're aligning with the agencies that are addressing these and doing the best we can to stay ahead of it and provide solutions that are both commercially viable and keep us as good corporate citizens.
John, to you, we talked a little bit about in the prep for this, how produce companies have adopted even how they grow to packaging they use. How easy is it to just pivot and shift into a new packaging product? Say if you're forced to do it inside 2 or 3 years, aren't you really talking about changing the way you farm, not just the packaging itself?
I mean, we have sections of the produce industry that really are there because of the packaging. We saw the developments in the 90s with the films and the oxygen transfer rate that made the fresh cut business possible, or the rigid packaging for berries when we went from cellophane and rubber bands to clamshells. We could deliver a very delicate raspberry across the country as opposed to just a regional. Think of an entire category like snacking tomatoes. What would that be like without rigid, transparent packaging? So yeah, it's and all of a sudden it either as quick as they came, strawberries went from little green punnets to clamshells in about 2 or 3 years, and it could go away.
So what role does packaging play in reducing shrink at the supermarket? Does it play any? And should this be an important issue, this sort of requirement for rapid change for grocers themselves?
I mean, the development one, is the consumer facing package. The other one is the distribution.
Right.
Now we're going to be looking at one, mechanized distribution models in warehouses. We saw the development of display ready containers where they don't unpack, they simply put it on there. And then of course we have the an entire plethora of products that, as opposed to individually stacking them on a display, they're now just a bulk thing. Citrus is a good example. Apples are a good example.
And Yeah, I hear what you're saying, that it's not just, not just talking about the display here, we're also talking about the shipping and the bulk. There's plastic used in that. There's boxes that have wax on them. There's all sorts of things you just can't replace overnight.
No, it's in a lot, and the deal is we get the hard deadlines that are implemented by this date. You must replace this material, and with what? I mean, it's fun if you look at what is it, the COP meetings, the conferences of the parties. They sit there and argue about, well, no, it can't apply to this yet because of this in all area of environment. So, I mean, that's this is kind of the conference of the parties on, don't eliminate that because I don't know what I'm going to do.
We've seen that even say in Canada, where produce packaging was going to get banned, and then after looking into it, the Canadian government was like trying to find a way to do something because they promised it, but they have realized, I think, that the produce needs packaging in a lot of cases because we're trying to protect a living product. And we're trying to protect it so that it's in someone's home and viable for 21 days, from packaging to refrigerator. And that isn't easy stuff. Well,
Yeah,
talk about not easy stuff. Tell us a little bit about the evolution of the compostable label and what bullseye you were trying to hit as you developed it.
Yeah, so we've been working on compostable labels for over a decade. It really started in the face films, trying to make that compostable and still work. A huge challenge for all produce label manufacturers is making labels that work for packers. They've got to work at high speed. They've got to work in a variety of conditions, from cold, wet, damp to hot and dry, and stick to those weird shapes in the different surface areas or surface conditions. So trying to deliver that and then also meet the compost standards. Traditional labels are meant to survive the supply chain, be food safe, and then, as I said, conform. So most compostable products or traditional materials don't lay down well. They're pretty stiff. And if a label is stiff, then the adhesive is exposed as it goes through packing, and the label ends up all over the sizer, the grater, and the packing equipment, which just makes the mess, costs more, and isn't effective. So trying to balance those two things at the same time, so product performance and then compostability. In the early days of compostable, we actually started aiming at industrial, which is higher temperatures and a little faster, and there were more materials available. Now the goal is home compostable and industrial compostable, and that was really driven by some of the key stakeholders, like in New Zealand and in Europe, who wanted the home so that people had that easy choice or that easy path at home. They can compost in their own facility or their own backyard. So trying to balance all of those things has been the challenge. We think we're there now with our latest product that we launched last October. So it's a product called T55. It is both home and industrial compostable, certified to both. And we're now in the process of rolling it out and getting ready for the PPWR implementation, and as well as the Australia changes coming in September.
So in all of this, you've had to hit different standards, right? In the US, we always talk about D6400, which is the
Right. So
industrial
in the
compostable.
US,
But I can see behind you it says
Yeah.
Austria, and what the hell?
Yeah, so we actually, because different regions are asking for different standards, we've actually made the effort to start certifying to each of the different standards around the world. So we work with TUV Austria, we work with Denserto in Europe, we worked with ABA in Australia, New Zealand, and then we're also members of BPI, which is the D6400 certifying body in North America. This latest product, because it was European centric for its launch, that's where we started the certifications. We're now working on the US one with BPI.
Europe doesn't have a general standard though, right? We default to the Austria standard, correct?
Well, so the standard is EN 13432. TUV Austria is the common certifying body. So you run the test with an independent lab. Those test results go to TUV Austria or to BPI or to Denserto. They look at it all, make sure that everything was completed, and that you've met the thresholds, and then they issue the certificate.
So, as you developed, what were the issues you ran into? I imagine adhesive wasn't an easy thing to solve when it comes to compostability.
You're dead on. Adhesive was the hardest part, and continues to be our biggest challenge. There's been quite a bit of space, especially if you look at other compostable products with like bags. We're seeing a lot of bags now, especially in North America and retail. The plastic film and the biodegradable film development has been going on for a while, but adhesives was a new space. And in the adhesive world, pressure sensitive adhesive world, a lot of those suppliers and those manufacturers didn't have a need for compostable really until, frankly, produce labels started talking about it and other packaging started talking about it. And so we didn't see a lot of innovation in that space for the first 10 years or so of our development. I would say in the last 3 years, we've really started to see interest. We've started to see new ideas coming about. We're involved in several, even though we have a product, we're still involved in adhesive development because we think there's still opportunity to grow. And what we've seen in the last few years is new ideas, new innovation on this is new chemistry that can it be sticky? Will it compost? Is it food safe? So
does having these regulations in place sort of drive innovation? And can innovation keep up with the dates we're looking at, say, in Australia, New Zealand, California? I mean, do you think it's possible that legislation is helping, or is it helping and hurting at the same time because there's unrealistic expectations about product development?
It's helping and it's doing both. So it is, the legislation is driving, the standard becomes the goal. The legislation and the timelines create the motivation to go innovate in that space. But it also, frankly, almost all of the dates don't take into account current state and how long development takes. And with produce labels, we get short windows to trial. So Zespri in New Zealand was our first big adopter. When we were testing with them, if something didn't work right, we had to wait another year before we could test it again because their window is so short. Like you need the real world feedback on does this label work? And you find out, oh, this doesn't quite work. You're out of time to create a new iteration and make it at scale and bring it back into New Zealand and pack again during their packing window. And yes, we can take it to other parts of the world. They grow a lot of kiwi in Europe, and we can go try there, but it's not the same. And as you said earlier, these are the fruit is living organism, and it's all a little bit different. And you've got to try it in all the different regions to really see how it works.
Stephanie, we've talked a little bit about this issue. You've trialed a lot of different products, and how do you think the innovation is out there for your products and the packaging you need to move forward, or no, you're going to need more time, or it's simply impossible?
So yes and no. For the persimmons that we do a small amount. We've switched from a clamshell and a corrugated box with a sleeve and all that packaging to a mini corrugated box, and it's worked great. We've had no issues with it. But going into the berry category to look at blueberries and grapes, I haven't found anything corrugated that's worked great for me, or the ones that I've trialed and liked. The price of the container itself was more than the product we were putting in it. So we were basically losing money by putting it in that packaging that it didn't necessarily work for what we wanted it to. There's other options we've looked at, but then you're still getting plastic in it. So can you recycle it? Will all recycling take it? It's that fine line of it's cheaper, we could use it, but is it really going to work and hit that mark of fully recyclable or fully compostable like we're going to want it to hit in the future?
Yeah. You think that innovation's coming, but it might be, say, 10 years from now, if California came back and said, forget about 2032, we're going to go with 2040. Is that the kind of time you
I
think?
think even in the next 5 years, like in the past 2 years that I've really been focusing on this, I've seen a bunch of different options and I've started trialing them. But like we talked about in the seasons, well, if I get something in July, the grape season does run a little bit longer, but I need that produce to sit there in our storage at that 98% humidity in that 32 degrees and make sure that nothing is going to go wrong in a transit period and in storage, where ideally we ship it within, say, 6 days, But if it sits there for 2 weeks and then it gets trucked across the country or put on a boat to China, we're going to really need to look at and see, are there going to be any issues? Are there going to be problems? Is it going to break down? And if the product can't hold in those transit periods, then it really doesn't work for us.
No, it certainly wouldn't. Matt, you've tried to jump in a couple of times and I
Well,
talked too fast.
So it's amazing to me, all the passion in this space seems to be around end of life and compostability, when there's many other elements within the sustainability conversation and the products. Food waste is a big element of sustainability, and those issues aren't being, a lot of times you're going to have more food waste with products that are not fully commercialized for this. Food safety is totally not even being talked about, and I think that's a pretty critical issue with some of the things we've seen lately. So while we support and develop products for these, these various initiatives, and understand that they help drive the innovation, but the law of unintended consequences sometimes is where we need to advocate. I think that's where we need to advocate more on, instead of just saying, all right, California, you win, compostability is the law of the land, and it's going to be in everything we do. There are plenty of high performance products that are fully recyclable, that, have water-based coatings that perform well in these type of applications. There's more initiatives around recyclability to ensure that, take some of the gray areas out of just saying, oh, it's recyclable. The how to recycle labeling, that the SBC sponsors were part of that as well. So I think advocating for a broader conversation is something that we as an industry need to continue to do. And if we can demonstrate those things, I think there's a more balanced approach to this.
I love the bringing up the law of unintended consequences. I shop at Whole Foods in Berkeley, and they banned plastics for putting bulk, say, cilantro into a bag. So you're having to use compostable. And we happen to leave the cilantro in the bag for the week. And what we have found at home is that the compostable packaging, the cilantro rots inside a week. We used to get 2 weeks of shelf life, and it's like, what the heck just happened? And I don't think anybody looked at this issue before banning plastics in the produce section. So we went out and bought a roll of plastic at home, so I can take 10 bags to the grocery store, and that's the move obviously in Berkeley has increased food waste, and then forced me to go buy plastic anyway. And last time I was in Whole Foods, someone asked me if they could borrow a bag. Stephanie, you were about to jump in on that.
Well, and that's part of the issue we've looked at, is just some things works and some things don't work. Berries have a lot of moisture, like that cilantro, and it's gonna go bad. Or when I did a trial on an uncoated corrugate, I grew mold. I grew 2 kinds of mold on the grapes and also on the cardboard, and that's causing, I'm throwing away product. It's going to be wasteful if it were to sit in a store and that product's going moldy in the store. No one's going to want to buy grapes, and it's going to put a bad taste in their mouth to go back to the grapes and buy them in 2 weeks when they still look fine, because they remembered how they looked when they first saw them.
Yeah, and consumers are used to a certain quality, and they're also used to a certain packaging, and they have to. I honestly don't know what I do about the conundrum of cilantro and compostable bags. But Matt, just to jump back to you, lidding is becoming really a big thing. If you go into most stores now, you're seeing plastic with a plastic clamshell with a lid on top as a way of reducing plastic's use. How, though, does the use of lidding right now affect recyclability? I don't think there's a compostable, there might be a compostable lid out there somewhere, but the adhesive is an issue. And I'd imagine even just because most lidding has that racetrack around it, you're still going to have some material on the plastic itself. What do you do about all this? I mean, how are you guys looking at tackling the lidding question?
Well, lidding is just one of, we made a considerable investment into converting capacity and things that where we're seeing changes from the PVC. PVC is another substrate that is, there's a movement away from PVC. There's a movement away from a lot of produce traditionally, like corn, has been tray packed, overwrapped with PVC. We have launched a overwrap product that's recyclable. But in addition to that, you see products that are traditionally tray packed, moving into a lidding because it's there's less material in general than in your traditional tray, or even to get a recyclable tray of those PET trays. That's a lot of material versus, a lighter weight lidding. And you take things not so much in the produce, there's flow wrap, but forming films are replacing the trays as well, where it's you have forming and non-forming films that create the package right around the product. Not as common so much in produce, but in other areas like meat. So we're seeing those type of films gain ground over your traditional tray pack. Because of that, it's just another way of reducing the amount of packaging. It doesn't necessarily address the compostable side of it, but there are many recyclable options. And I think your organization is pretty involved in the PCR element as well. That's another way of reducing it by having more PCR product in the packaging. It's just another way to reduce the amount of plastic in that space. And I know I said a lot and maybe didn't answer specifically,
No,
but
it's all right. I mean, PCR is interesting because it is a little bit more affordable than the other options out there. It's PCR that's FDA and PCR is post-consumer recycled resin. Are you guys starting to use more PCR, or are you getting questions about PCR, or people are still skeptical based on availability? I mean, some of my customers like DeRigo and Wada Farms on the potato side with Walmart, they've jumped in with both feet. And as a result, they've secured supply. But what are you seeing? And are customers asking you for anything?
yeah, PCR is not, it's funny how fast the conversation changed. A major retailer decides on something, and then I laugh about this over the years that, once one retailer does something, it's like everybody does it. So PCR now, all of a sudden PCR is the number one topic when I'm having conversations with major food manufacturers. I'm hearing PCR quite a bit. We have some solutions in that, but we're obviously going to be putting more investment into those type of things. And hopefully by the time we're commercialized more, that the conversation doesn't change and go another direction.
Well, I think for the entire panel, we've talked a little bit about legislation, but then to your point, grocers are also pushing this conversation. Everybody had 2025 commitments. I mean, we did too, and we all blew it.
Oops.
I mean, I could do PCR, but there's a cost to it, right? I have to raise the price of the product 2-3% to cover it, sometimes more than that. And so no one would buy it. So, I mean, John, Stephanie, Will, are you guys dealing with the grocers on this as well? Are they coming to you asking you or to provide solutions, or silence?
Let's understand, any grocer that is a publicly traded corporation that's a standard that the financial markets were putting on them, that they had to have environmental goals as part of their business plan, or else they would not be able to trade on the exchange. That was it. So, they're in a way, yeah, It's not that they're getting their investor relations department is telling their operations people, hey, we need to do this.
Sort of like the ESG thing, or is that,
I mean, yeah, ESG, because you also had requirements in the environmental part, the sustainability, and in corporate governance, they've manifest in different ways. But S3 is not something that comes out of a consumer's mouth. That comes out of that is a regulatory requirement.
right?
I think we fool ourselves a bit. We say, oh, well, this is all being demanded by the customers. Well, no, a lot of it is coming from activists through non-governmental organizations to governmental organizations to publicly traded and down to us. I mean, that's kind of it rolls downhill.
Yeah, we hear that all the time. Well, customers are demanding sustainability, but every time some sort of poll is done and you list 20 attributes folks are looking for in the grocery store, sustainable packaging is like down around 7, 8, 9, 10. It's never number one. Number one's price. Number two is something new but lower price. It's not. This isn't being driven by consumers, this conversation. It's really being driven by legislators who are being driven by activists. And I'm not disparaging any of it, but I after being involved in this stuff for 10 years, 20 years, that's certainly what I see. Stephanie, what kind of feedback you're the sustainability guru at the company. What are grocers asking you for?
Well, it's different, I would say, in every market. A lot of our Canadian retailers are very much pushing. It started with getting rid of the produce packaging and the plastics. They've now listed it's that golden design rules that everyone has to follow, which luckily it's been fairly easy, I would say, to comply with that compared to a lot of other things we're seeing getting pushed through that we were able to very much those Julian date and lot code stickers that are typically on a lot of produce packs, when that produce was packaged. We've been able to transition those to keep that container fully recyclable. So that's worked for us for now. It's more or less starting to get into that how to chew recycle and those things. When you're listing it on an item that might get sent to Toronto, to Montreal, to Vancouver, to somewhere in the middle outside of Calgary, can it actually all be recycled the same? Are there those facilities that have the capabilities that a retailer across Canada might be pushing, but is it going to be able to be recycled across Canada?
Will, we've sort of jumped to the talking to grocers and retailers conversation here.
That's all right.
Does Sinclair talk to the grocers? Are you educating them
So
as they try to hit these goals?
we're definitely happy to talk to anyone interested about compostable labels and the impact. Traditionally, our business model has focused on the packers, and we have not fostered relationships with the retailers directly, especially in North America, where the brands tend to sit at the brand level. In Europe and some other markets where the retailers have their own brands, we've had conversations and relationships about their brand management because they'll have 5 or 10 different packers using their brand, and that's where it started. Right now, around the compostable space, if retailers are seeking us to have a conversation about it, we'll answer it, but we're not actively out trying to push this conversation into the retailers. We're focused on the packers.
Matt, I would love to talk to the retailers. Has LK found a way, or is it mainly talking to regulators or just talking to customers directly?
Well, we straddle two worlds. We spend time at the retail because we sell both products for in-store packaging and we sell products to the manufacturing side of the business. So we're really talking to both sides of it, but the retailers are I don't know where their belief is in this is, but they're clearly the sustainability issue is something that's very strong in their conversations. It seemed for a while there that recycling was where we were going to settle on, which I think is a place where we all can provide a safe product that's attractive and lasts long. When it pushed further into the compostable side of it, that's where we still have, I think, a lot of challenges on research and development. And when you look at costing in a hyperinflationary food world, you want to add 20% into your cost on your packaging. That doesn't seem very, if you took that to a consumer, I don't think they would be consumers would be saying. It's funny, you talk about those consumer studies. I mean, we belong to people like FMI, and I follow their research, and it's funny that when you see these things that, oh, this type of consumer indicates that they'll pay more for a sustainable product, and never works that way. I have products in my warehouse that I may never sell, that are compostable. I have some in my warehouse that did exactly what they were supposed to do. They composted, and I'll never sell those.
Obviously, we've been working with compostables ourselves since 2002, and the cost remains a gigantic issue. We have one customer who decided to do a fully compostable package. It went from $6 a pound to $12 a pound. I mean, that's, you just can't eat that. I mean, the consumers, the grocers won't take it, and the consumer won't take it either. And that really is that a problem with labels too? Do the compostable labels cost twice as much as non-compostable?
It's not twice as much. It's around 60%. But I think there's a difference there in that a label is significantly cheaper than other packaging. It's still well below a penny per label.
Okay, so I mean, there are some solutions out there where if you were actually to raise the cost of the final product to cover the label, you're only talking fractions of pennies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, labels then probably have a significant and good future.
I think there's a theme though of all of this, of you picking the right material and the right technology for the solution, and in compostable labels where it's really difficult to separate the label from the fruit, that is a viable solution. But as a consumer, I agree with you of, I don't want, knowing what I know about compostable materials, like I don't want that on grape in a grape package.
Yeah.
Every technology needs to be used in the appropriate manner is I think a huge takeaway from this conversation.
Is Stephanie, that true? You don't want to use compostables on grapes?
I honestly haven't even started getting into that spectrum yet because I don't necessarily trust it for grapes, or the berry category, I should say.
Because the breathability, or then you throw on price, all that stuff.
There's so many factors to it besides the price, the quality, the shelf life. I've seen it done, but also then you get into, if you don't use that package, then it goes away and it's never going to be used again because you can't use it after that 12-month shelf life.
Right. Yeah. Well, to your point, Matt, it broke down in your warehouse. The issue here, though, is we've got CalRecycle, we have folks, and we've got legislators and regulators around the world. How do we enter in? Are folks? Are you, any of you, talking directly to legislators or regulators on these issues? How do we educate? Because I work with the Western growers, and getting them, helping them is great as an organization, but they have a problem getting their members to reach out directly and educate legislators here in California. I know that, because we've tried, but how about any of you? Are you talking directly or advocating directly for the packaging you need with the folks who are responsible in Sacramento or around the world for telling us we got to use it? Anybody?
I've had some conversations, and I've brought up that we have a balkanization of packaging requirements, and some of them are they're not that they're the same, they're just different. For example, a DC in Portland, Oregon that distributes Washington State and Oregon State might have different packaging requirements or recycling label, and so whereas, for example, we have a list for chemical residue on grapes, which grapes can go to which markets because the regulations are all different. Am I going to have now a list that, okay, this is packed in this bag, it can go to Oregon, but not to Washington? Am I going to get to that level of granularity with my packaging? Okay, and other nightmares we can talk about. Yeah, I've had that discussion with some federal legislators that really we need to, whatever we do, we don't want it balkanized where the city of Berkeley is doing one and LA County is doing another one and the state of Nevada is doing a third.
Well, that's where.
That's where we
the
are.
State of play right now, and I don't see.
Yeah, amen to that.
What's that, Matt?
I said amen to that.
So what do we do? I mean, Matt, you're here on screen. What do we do?
Well, I think you're right. I think advocacy has to be a bigger part of it. I know we're involved with several organizations, industry organizations that we help with that, but I think we need to take a more direct role in it. I know, Kevin, you're part of the IFPA as well. You're in their sustainability initiatives. We're not a huge company. We're a large company, but I don't have the resources of, some of a big consumer brands company. So there's only so much time that I have in my day besides my commercial endeavors to also be an advocate for sustainability. But it's definitely something that, my role was created to not only educate and help develop products, but to take some more steps in the advocacy part, because we need to get some sensibility around this, especially when I think the two biggest issues are food waste and then also food safety.
California has one of its major goals is the reduction of food waste, and they're trying to eliminate the packaging that'll help them do that. There's
it's
contradictory.
Well, no, they're not solutions, they're trade-offs. They're not solutions, they're trade-offs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I had a great experience where I talked to the assembly person from Salinas who had no idea the role packaging played in the Salinas Valley. No one had explained it to her before. I just was absolutely stunned by that. And to some degree, this is our fault, for not getting out there. So Matt, you're going to get pulled in. There's just no way around it. I know your phone number now, so I'll be calling. But what about paper? Paper is showing up a little bit more in Europe, say in diaper packaging, and of course it's been in flour packaging flour for baking packaging for a long time. Do you see opportunities in paper at all, or is Amazon using all the paper now for envelopes? I had like 6 packages at home. They were all paper when I got back from a recent trip, and all I could think of was, well, there goes my opportunity. But how about paper? Stephanie, have you guys looked at that?
We've looked at it, but just looking industry wide and the changes that they want to make, not just for produce, but all packaging in general. If you look at the spectrum of what the plastic industry is and what the paper industry is, all these retailers that want you to comply with any paper products you're sending need to be FSC certified, or they want a certification that you're not promoting deforestation. And I don't think there's a feasibility in being able to convert all plastic products to paper without contributing to deforestation. I just don't think there is that forest space and that paper space there to be able to comply with that.
Any Matt, I mean, are people asking you about paper at all, or it's just a conversation getting passed over?
No, it's so we're in paper. We do some in paper. We're in fiber as well. Mostly on the recyclable side, whether it's a water-based coating, or we do compostable where you have a cellulose window, so you could still have an attractive package that presents the product, that has some type of barrier on it. It's still cost prohibitive. On the paper side, if you're going to do something if you're going to sell food, it has to be seen. That's the thing that people forget. You have to present your product in a way that's desirable to a consumer. That's how they buy food. It's, oh, that looks great. I think I'm going to buy that. Um, so when you have paper, there's, things like flow wrap where you have windows on it. But again, you're going to have a plastic element to that. There's no way to make paper to have a high visibility combined without some kind of PE or cellulose
Right. No,
product to it.
you're right. But I am going to Italy in 2 weeks and to look at a laminator that of course can do that you can, where you have a laser on it that's creating that window and then puts a compostable material instead of a plastic material as the window. That though is, I'll probably end up buying something like that. But it's, out there maybe as far as getting adopted on a huge level, 10, 15 years. Because keeping leafy greens, for instance, which is my bailiwick, in paper at this point is pretty much an impossible, mission. Maybe we'll get there, we'll see. But I think the contributing to deforestation issue though, Stephanie, is a big one. And there are some paper products, paper fiber products that they're trying to use grass now to create. I guess it's fiber. It wouldn't be called paper. The issue there, of course, is scaling any of this. Have you had to change your production process at all in terms of creating a something that's compostable? Is this
Well, so
technology
far
scalable in a way to replace every sticker that's being consumed out there across the planet?
so far we've been able to create supply chains and create products that fit into our existing label manufacturing, printing presses and conversion equipment. I think that has to do with the fact that to get compostable even close to the price and scalable, it's got to go through the same film manufacturing and adhesive coating processes in that infrastructure. So we haven't had to make a huge amount of change, but it's definitely a new supply chain for us, and controlling that supply chain and making sure that they all understand what the aspects of food safety and the lead times here.
I am going to say that the paper conversations being driven here by a listener. So this isn't a place I intended to go. And they are advocating for grass. So, maybe it's out there, maybe it's something we can scale. I don't know. We're getting towards closing. We got about 5 minutes. What wisdom could you pass on, or what issues haven't we discussed that you would have liked us to address in the last 55 minutes?
Let's go to that trade-off, that wood pulp for a grass cellulose. I mean, it's kind of like when we went to ethanol for part of our gasoline. Well, it takes about 35 million acres to be 10%. And you go out and say, okay, how much land mass and how much water would it take to have that much grass to replace the trees? We have, what is it, about 500 or 600 million acres of woodlands and forests. Trees grow, they're a crop. The save a tree, don't cut down a tree. That was not good advice. That was bad advice.
No, it turned out to be bad advice. Yes.
Right. They tell us now not to burn in our fireplace yet. Have you seen pictures out of Los Angeles in the last few weeks?
Yeah.
I don't feel guilty about not burning on Not Burn Day. Whoops.
And environmentalists used to pressure the state not to clear the forest. Now they're pressuring the state to clear the forest. You talk about trade-offs. What we thought was the right answer turned out to be the wrong answer. Now we're being asked to do another right answer, and we're hoping it is the right answer.
No, and and generally speaking, we have to we have to avoid the fashion statement. You know, it's like, okay, everything in the Captain Planet days of the 90s was recycle, recycle, recycle. The t-shirt, one single-use grocery bags we all had. There was a recycle bin in the store for a generation. We didn't use that. They tried to get people to buy reusable bags that they'd sell you for 99 cents. They didn't do that. Then they got thicker bags so you could reuse it. Oh no, now we're throwing away too much plastic. Now we're on the compostable bags, but in 1 month, I've dropped 2 pounds of rice in the aisle and about 1.5 pounds of lentils on a cashier's conveyor belt. Okay, so how long till that we decide that and no one ever admits that, okay, that we chased a poor solution to substitute for another poor, to substitute something else out. That's our problem. So we get into these activist-driven deadlines, and that it's at some point you say, okay, I'm going to go out and spend $1 gazillion to address one of these problems with the technology, and oh my God, what happens if they decide on something else? It's like the lesser plastic. Oh yeah, that's great until but bro, it's still plastic. We want zero plastic, and then boom, then your machine's dead. That's our big problem.
These are the conundrums I live every day when I come into the office.
I'm just gonna sit here and listen and let John go.
This is your life. I go.
Call John at 1-800-PANDAL.
Stephanie, any final thoughts?
Back on the legislative thing, I have to say we're part of California Fresh Food Association, which for us has been great because they do take a trip. They did it the past 2 years. I've actually gone with them, and we've actually been able to meet with legislators, and it might not necessarily be just packaging, but informing legislators in general on what's going on in agriculture, what's going on in produce, what's going on in the Central Valley. It's very helpful for us because we can sit there and talk about SB 54, and they might not know the concerns that we face with it. And when they go sit at the table, they're more aware of these things. So for us, that's my big thing is I've done it the past 2 years. I'm a big advocate of it. I've enjoyed going. I've enjoyed meeting with everyone. And I hope that if more industry members can go do that, it's great. You can let them know and tell them your worries and concerns about the farm you've had for 40 years or the industry, like for me, that I'm freshly in, that I don't want the industry to go away. I've based my life kind of around this and planning to be in the industry for a while, and I'm hoping to be in the industry for a while. So
well, we would like you to be in the industry a while too. Will, any final thoughts here? It's actually noon.
Yeah,
I have no idea whether this thing shuts off at noon, but I have a tendency to go overtime when I moderate. But at any rate, Will, final thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with get involved. Sinclair is active with IFPA, the Sustainability Committee, CPMA. There's a lot of good people in there, and starting to realize we need to put the time into educating at the legislative level, at the consumer level, that there's so much science and so much work into packaging that, I sit outside of the packaging world that you guys are in, on the periphery. And there's a lot that I learn every time I go to those meetings, and I know the general public doesn't know it. So spending the time educating and talking about the great stuff we are doing to protect the food and provide safe, healthy food.
Yeah, I think definitely getting involved with WGA, IFPA, CPMA just does some amazing work on packaging. Those guys know more about packaging than I do. And so definitely support CPMA. Matt, you agree with everything that's been said and you second it.
Amen. Amen. That's all I have to say.
Okay, well, we're out of time. We were out of time a minute ago. So I want to thank everybody for your participation today. I could probably go on for another half an hour now because I've had 2 cups of coffee. And we'll see you out on the front lines. And I'm looking forward to working with everybody on advocacy and packaging development. And good luck. And we're done.